this is the first time you watch one of my videos, I recommend you to subscribe. This could save your life.
A vampire in Chicago. Real story. They are between us. From the beginning of time, there are stories that tell us about beings with human appearance, sharp quotes, and long nails, called vampires. These entities move in most cases at night, feed on blood, although they can consume blood from animals and humans. It's said that vampires cannot walk during the day, but this is not entirely true, unlike ordinary vampires who are beings of supernatural strength. Daytime vampires are closer to humans than previously thought. Although they lack the enormous power of the vampires of myths, they also lack their weaknesses. Sunlight does not affect them in the least. Although it's possible to kill a night walker as a man can be killed, it's still more difficult. Daytime vampires infiltrate on small groups within human societies. Contrary what is thought, vampires don't live in remote places. On the contrary, they live in large cities where they have enough energy and physical food. Its appearance is attractive and stunning to human eyes, as when a dog sees a wolf. Only deep admiration and sublime respect can evoke the inferior human eyes towards an ancestral race like the daytime vampires. With this introduction, I hope it has become clear what daytime vampires are and you will can understand today's story. This story happens in 1995, exactly in the Cuban capital, La Habana. There lived a young woman named Vanessa, a single mother of a 6-year-old girl. Vanessa was going through a very difficult economic situation. Therefore, she decided to leave her little daughter with her mother and embark on a trip in search of better employment opportunities to the United States. For reasons of life, Vanessa ends up living in the city of Wentz, in the famous Chicago. Vanessa is now a domestic worker of a high-class family in the northeast of the city. In those years, Chicago was a great reception of immigrants because of its high industrial level for what many people saw and still sees this beautiful land as a place to emerge. In the house where Vanessa started working, she met a young woman named Marta, a 22-year-old girl who works with her in the same house as babysitter on weekends. Like Vanessa, Marta was a young illegal immigrant who came from Mexico, a girl that Vanessa describes as sweet and generous, who came to the US in search of better opportunities to help her family. The two young women made chemistry from the beginning because both had the same purpose: work hard to help their families and someday return to their land to enjoy the built product of their effort. Both became great friends and shared a room on the south side of Chicago. On Fridays, both women could go out and as ordinary young people enjoy the great metropolis. But that November, everything would change for her friend Marta. On Saturday afternoon, Marta arrived at the house to take care of the little children, but this time with a very different attitude. Without saying a single word, Marta moved around the house, preparing everything for the children and to replace to Vanessa the Cuban girl in her position. Since Vanessa saw Marta, she realized that she had a totally different attitude, and she also saw a horrible red scar on Marta's neck. Vanessa tried to talk to her and ask her what was happening, and this was what Marta answered. On Monday, November 11, a date she remembers too well because it was a Veterans Day. If you don't live in the US, well, it's basically a holiday. She walked around the Humboldt Park at 4 p.m. when she decided to sit on one of the benches. An elegant young man stopped in his expensive and modern car. He stopped in front and started talking to her. At first, she thought he wanted to ask her for an address, which is why Martha approached to listen to what the young man wanted to say. When they started talking, Martha noticed that the young man had a very European accent. In addition to his physical features, he did not look like someone native to the place, to which she thought that was normal, as Chicago has a large community of Eastern Europeans, Poles, Ukrainians, etc. The man had light brown eyes and a dark blonde hair. He was a 22 to 30 years old man. Martha talked to him for several minutes, so the young asked if she was waiting for someone in particular, to which Martha responded negatively. "I'm just for a walk," she said. That man asked if Martha was a foreigner, just like him. Therefore, there were also some chemistry. The young man offered her to take a tour to see the city in his modern car at that time. In addition, the young man added, "The Humboldt Park after 5 p.m. is not an appropriate place for a young girl. It's full of thugs and ruffians." Martha just replied, "I have nothing of value to be robbed." However, Martha saw a great opportunity to meet a handsome young tall man with brutally seductive eyes and who also appeared to be rich. Finally, Martha agreed to go with the young European for a walk. After a long gathering, the young man proposed Martha to go home. Immediately, she was silent thinking, "This guy just wants to sleep with me." And the young man, as if he had read her mind, replied, "I swear, I don't want to take you to bed. I just want to share with you because I see in you a part of myself." Later, they came to an unknown area to Martha because the young woman had not lived in the city for a long time and also did not go out too much, just to go to work. The area they arrived at was a kind of suburb with gigantic houses, like mini mansions, to which Martha, being from a small town, was astonished with such opulence. Upon arriving, Martha noticed that each house was far from another, and the splendid nature of the place was incredible. When they arrived, they entered through a large marble gate that gave entrance to the front garden of the house. The girl's eyes shone because she imagined living in a place like that. She imagined being the wife of the handsome and rich man. Her dream did not last long because Martha realized that the house was totally alone and asked, "You live alone here?" To which he replied, "I have many employees who take care of household chores, but today they have a free day since it's the Veterans Day." Martha found this explanation very logical. After touring the house, they reached a balcony with a splendid view of other houses and the ecosystem of the place in general. The man who was trying to seduce the young girl through his tricks offered her a high-end cocktail, and while they were talking, Martha saw the back of the room and realized that there was a macabre black door with strange Orthodox crosses and symbols stuck on it. It became very strange to her as she did not notice the sinister door when she entered the place. Martha asked, "What is there?" To what the young man, without saying a single word and with a superhuman speed, reached the door and opened it, dispatching what was indoors. Strangely, every second that passed, Martha felt more and more dizzy. With just a few drinks of that cocktail, Martha could no longer stand, and everything she saw was increasingly fleeting and ambiguous. She supposed that the man had drugged her with scopolamine or some drug similar. She could only remember that from the door came many lights like candles, and a mysterious man with a black cape saw her and started making fun of her. He was not the same who picked her up. His features were totally different. The only thing she remembers of that man is that his skin was a mix of gray and white. He had a smile that occupied half of his face, a mocking smile that uncovered some gigantic evil teeth. This creature with a malefic countenance approached her with a mocking and derisive laughter, while Marta, in turn, was lost in her mind. When she woke up, Marta, who was thoroughly confused, thinking that she was still in Mexico, thinking that she was still in her small hometown, and that everything had been a fantasy. Chicago, the United States, all had been just a nightmare. Unfortunately, this was not the case. The thick voice of that man, the Polish or Ukrainian man or whatever he was, called her, this time with a macabre and hateful look. He grabbed Marta in his arms and starting at her, threatened her to kill each of her relatives. The man spoke to Marta of her mother Guadalupe, her little sisters, and her grandfather. All of those Marta knew, including her good friend Vanessa, the Cuban girl. I make a parenthesis here to remember my listeners that in the 90s there was not internet, no cell phones or anything to find such inside information of another person. Marta, in a state of catharsis, simply nodded and accepted the orders of this man, like a little puppy that nods his head to his owner who has hit him with a newspaper. The man repeatedly told her, "Stupid brown-skinned Indian, you're not going to say anything about me or my master." Marta did not quite understand who her master was. She simply nodded. She was terrified of the amount of information the subject knew about her. How the hell an unknown man in a city so far from her homeland knew so much about her? And that Monday night, the man left Marta at the door of her house, the apartment she shared with Maria. When she arrived, she realized that Marta was not there because the young Cuban would be sleeping and doing a 24-hour shift at her boss's house. They only saw each other until that Sunday. After hearing this heart-breaking story without hesitation for a minute, Vanessa took Marta to a private hospital, and with her savings, she had to pay for the medical consultation plus the exams they did to Marta. The medical diagnosis was simple. Marta had no signs of rape or anything similar. The strange thing was her red scar on her neck. She was also diagnosed with a lack of red cells. Marta had lost a lot of blood. They were surprised at how she could stand. Once they arrived home, Vanessa asked Marta some details of the story again. But Marta said, "I don't even remember the name of the man. I'm sure he told me, but I can't remember it. What's more, I can't even remember his face anymore." After some months of what happened, Marta returned to Mexico with her family. She couldn't resist the horrible nightmares she had every night, plus the paranoia and loneliness. The terrible feeling of being observed and persecuted by these strange beings tormented Marta every second of her existence. Vanessa, unlike Marta, stayed to live in Chicago and to this day inhabits this great city. With effort and dedication, she was able to bring her little daughter. Vanessa never heard of Marta again. She tried to find her in recent years through social networks, but she could never find her. More than 20 years have passed since that event, and we will never know if the Chicago vampire continued with his terrible practices, or if someone could put an end to this or these beings. Story narrated and translated by Alexandro. Marta's name is not real. Her name was changed to avoid revealing or damaging this person's integrity. Thanks for listening.